And welcome everybody to the next edition of WrestleMania Best to Worst, where today I will be covering the Tag Team Championship matches that have occurred in WrestleMania's history. Now, I should note as a little caveat here, a couple little caveats. Number one, I will not be including pre-show matches. It has become somewhat standard practice in some of the recent WrestleManias to make the tag title match the pre-show match. It's typically a fatal four-way to cram as many guys on there, because it's not like we have to promote these guys or make them feel important or anything. No. They get relegated to the pre-show. But as I've said in other videos, pre-show matches don't count, and I just don't feel the need to cover those particular matches, mainly because I just don't want to go back and watch pre-shows to WrestleManias. But, yeah, so pre-show matches will not be included in this. Also, I should note that there was a brief period, well, not totally brief, I mean, from 2002 to, I want to say, when did they unify the belts? I want to say 2009. So there was about 6 years or so where there were two sets of tag team championships because, and as it turned out, it was a terrible idea because they could never get either division to be truly deep. So it just felt like you always had like two teams going for each belt. And I'm like, that's just spreading yourself a little too thin there. But in any case, there was a brief period where there were two sets of tag team championships, one for the Raw brand and one for the SmackDown brand, and they were unified at the, I believe it was the pre-show of WrestleMania 25. A unification match that gets relegated to the pre-show. That tells you with the standing of the tag team championship these days. But, yeah. For a brief period, there were two sets of tag titles, and the championship matches involving the SmackDown tag titles, which were created especially for the brand split era, will be included in this list. It's only two additional matches. It wasn't that much. And ultimately, the titles were unified anyway, so it just, I don't see the problem with discussing all of the tag team championship matches that have occurred in WrestleMania's history. And it's, like I said, it was only two extra ones, so it's not that bad. So with that, let's get started. The best tag team championship match in WrestleMania history is a match, once again, I've already covered this one in the ladder match video. The Dudley Boyz defending against the Hardy Boyz and Edge and Christian at WrestleMania 2000 in a tag team triangle ladder match for the gold. I've already talked about what this match meant in terms of ladder matches and the evolution of that style of gimmick match and the highlight reel aspect of these type of matches. But it was really important for tag team wrestling too, because it gave them kind of this and these were the three teams right here. It was the Dudley Boyz, the Hardy Boyz, and Edge and Christian, who were all making their in-ring WrestleMania debuts at this point. Edge and Christian had a non-wrestling role at 15 the year before, but this was the first time that all three teams were featured at WrestleMania in a wrestling capacity, and they got a big show-stealing spot out of it too. So it was really interesting to see the tag team division get that level of praise and that level of promotion behind it. And in a lot of ways, it was kind of like the tag team renaissance, that late 90s, early 2000s period. I mean, at the same time, you had a bunch of other teams. I mean, there was no shortage of tag teams. It wasn't just these three. You had the Acolytes, you had the Right to Censor. They came up later in 2000, I think. You had Too Cool. You had the Radicals were together at this point. You had Head Cheese. You had TNA. You had all sorts of other teams. It was a very deep tag team roster, and these three teams were kind of the crown jewels, and the matches that they were putting on and the build-ups to these matches, they were really putting on something special and really raising the bar as far as tag team wrestling goes. Not just in terms of how the matches are worked, but in terms of like the level of promotion behind those matches. And this, like I said, this was the best match on this particular WrestleMania, and it's the match that this WrestleMania is known for, and it was centered around the Tag Team Championship, which is pretty cool. So, obviously, as I've said before, Edge and Christian, they won this match, winning their first tag team titles. First of, I believe, 7 or 8. It was ridiculous how many times they were tag team champions in the span of a year. It was a little silly. But, in any case, it was a great match and a great showcase for the tag team division. And that's really why it's the #1 tag team championship match in WrestleMania history. Number 2 might seem a little strange, but it's one of my favorites. From WrestleMania 7, the Hart Foundation defending against the Nasty Boys, with Jimmy Hart in the Nasty Boys corner, managing the team going up against his former crown jewel tag team, the Hart Foundation. Yeah, I just really like this match. It's hard to imagine the Nasty Boys being a part of anything that's considered like among the best of anything, because they're the Nasty Boys. But they had their moments, and this was definitely one of their moments. I think this is definitely the best match they ever had, at least from what I've ever seen. And I thought it was just a great, well-worked, well-wrestled tag team championship match, and just great tag team action throughout. The Harts were the type of team that could get a good match out of just about anybody, and they had a very nice, the Hart Foundation was more of the well-oiled machine. The Nasty Boys were rougher around the edges, and those styles kind of meshed well together, I thought. This WrestleMania also had the Rockers versus Haku and the Barbarian in the opening match, so some of the best, pure tag team action was at this WrestleMania, actually, when you take those two matches into consideration. And I thought this was a great match, and it's also got a bit of historical significance to it. It was the last time that Bret the Hitman Hart and Jim the Anvil Neidhart teamed up together in a straight-up 2-on-2 tag team match. Obviously, there's a Canadian Stampede in your house main event, but that was a 10-man tag. This is a 2 versus 2. It was the last time that the Hart Foundation teamed together on pay-per-view. So for that, it's a pretty significant match. And obviously, because this was their last pay-per-view match together, the Harts lost, thanks to some shenanigans involving Jimmy Hart lending assistance to the Nasty Boys to helping them win. But the Nasty Boys would win the tag titles, ultimately be set up to drop the belts to Legion of Doom later that year at SummerSlam 91. And, to set all that up and to be a final kind of swan song for the Hart family, or Hart Foundation, and to just put on a really damn good tag team match. I thought this match was good for all of those things, and I thought, just a great match, just a great championship match. And one interesting point is that Macaulay Culkin was in the crowd for this event. During this match, they highlighted him, and he seemed to be a little perplexed by the Nasty Boys or something. It was really kind of funny, but it kind of dates this WrestleMania too. Macaulay Culkin, whenever you see little kid Macaulay Culkin in anything, it's like, oh, you know exactly what era this comes from. But in any case, I just really liked that championship match. I thought it was very good. Number 3 from WrestleMania 2, the Dream Team versus the British Bulldogs. Dream Team being Greg the Hammer Valentine and Brutus the Barber Beefcake. Probably the best match Brudi was ever a part of. Although he didn't really do much in the match. Valentine did most of the work. But yeah, when you hear British Bulldogs, you think of tag team excellence, because they had so many great tag team matches. And, Dynamite Kid and Davey Boy were so great together. Complemented each other very well. And they had great matches with just about anybody. And actually, I mentioned this with the Intercontinental title matches and how Tito versus Greg should have happened at WrestleMania 1. You could kind of argue that Harts versus Bulldogs should have happened at WrestleMania at some point, either at this one or at WrestleMania 3. At WrestleMania 3, they had a 6-man tag with Dangerous Danny Davis and Tito Santana thrown into the mix. And that was a really good match, but part of me also kind of wishes that we had gotten Harts versus Bulldogs in a straight-up tag team championship match at a WrestleMania. I think it would have been stellar. It would have been amazing. But in any case, we did get this match here, and it is a damn good, action-packed, well-worked tag team match. It was the main event of the Chicago portion of the show. It closed out the second third of the event. And just great tag team action all the way throughout. Valentine worked well with them. Dynamite looked great. Bulldog, I keep calling him Bulldog because he's the one who kind of kept the name. But Davey Boy looked great in there. I think the finish was kind of botched because there was a point where Valentine got whipped into the turnbuckle while Dynamite was on the top rope, and they kind of clunked heads together, and I think they kind of rushed into the finish because Dynamite looked legitimately hurt and like he got busted open hard way. But that's one of those cases where the botch didn't really hurt the match. It actually, in a weird way, kind of enhanced it because it was so sick and nasty. It was like, ooh, God. And, it's also one of those nice lessons. Don't try this at home, kids, because anything bad can happen. But overall, I just thought it was a hard-hitting, stiff fest of a match, and a lot of fun. One of the better matches at this particular WrestleMania. There was another really good tag match, too. JYD and Tito Santana versus the Funk Brothers. That was a really good one as well. See, at the early WrestleManias, they would actually try and have multiple tag matches to try and showcase the the strength, the depth of the division, and they don't really do that anymore. But yeah, you'd always get like these nice little gem tag team matches at some of the early WrestleManias, and this was the championship match, and it was a damn good one. Also, I have to point out that Ozzy Osbourne was in the British Bulldogs corner and looked drugged out of his mind, as you would expect from Ozzy. And but yeah, it turned out very well. Great championship match. The Bulldogs ended up winning the titles, which was a nice moment for this WrestleMania. Actually, in the first two WrestleManias, the tag team championship changed hands both times. So it was the only title that changed hands at the first two WrestleManias, which is kind of... Oh, I take that back, actually. The women's title at one. I'd forgotten about it, because the women's title didn't really play much of a role after... it also changed hands. Was Velvet McIntyre the champion going into two when Moolah beat her? I don't know. The women's title is largely unimportant at the early WrestleManias. As good of a job as they did with the IC and tag titles at the earlier WrestleManias, the women's title was almost a non-entity, except for the first one where it was actually like a really big match and really mattered. But yeah, the tag team championship. It was pretty well highlighted at some of the early WrestleManias, and this WrestleMania 2 was definitely one of the highlights. And it's a bit of a forgotten classic, so if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend go check it out. It's really good. Number 4, the second TLC match between the three top teams of the Tag Team Renaissance that I talked about earlier. It was the Dudley Boyz defending against the Hardy Boyz against Edge and Christian in a TLC match at WrestleMania 17, the final encounter between all three of these teams. And it's serving as like a final encounter for all three teams working with each other. It's not bad. It's actually quite good. It's a spot fest. I talked about this in the ladder match video. I don't think it holds up as well as the WrestleMania 2000 one, but it's a pinball match. Guys, it's a car wreck match. Guys are bouncing all over the place. You've got Lita, Rhyno, and Spike Dudley playing roles and adding different components and different feel to the match. But I've said it before, I wish they had actually done something a little different with them, because we'd already seen this with the TLC thing. But another way to look at it is that you got a nice trilogy out of it. You got the WrestleMania 2000 match, the SummerSlam 2000 match, and then you got this match. So you got a nice trilogy, bing, bang, boom, and then that was it. It was a highlight reel spot fest that highlighted the three best teams that the WWF had to offer at the time. And as a conclusion to that, I thought it worked very well. Edge and Christian got the win again, kind of cementing them as the top team of that era of tag team wrestling. Arguably the most dominant team in WrestleMania history. I mean, they were in 2 tag team championship ladder matches, and they won both of them, so that puts them up there as one of the top, most dominant teams in the history of WrestleMania. But there's another one that's potentially up there as well, and I'll get to them just right now. Number 5 on my list, the Colossal Connection, the team of Andre the Giant and Haku, representing the Heenan family, taking on Demolition at WrestleMania 6, the first international WrestleMania. Yeah, this match had the heat of a main event. It really did feel like a really big match. The crowd really seemed into Demolition, and whenever you put Andre in there, even at this stage of his career, it typically gets people like kind of jacked up because Andre's a big deal. And even though he wasn't legally tagged in this match, I actually kind of like that touch, which, again, this may have just been a happy accident, but the title match where the Colossal Connection defeated Demolition to win the titles actually occurred because Haku and Andre were able to keep Demolition from ever tagging in and out, and because of that, they were just pretty much able to dominate and take the titles, which I thought was a nice touch. Well, here, Demolition did the same thing. They kept Haku in the ring the whole time. Andre never got legally tagged in, and they ended up winning their titles back, employing the same strategy that Haku and Andre did. It's like, I like little touches like that. Again, it was probably a happy accident, but it's one that I appreciated. So, yeah, Demolition won the belts back. I thought, again, the crowd was so jacked up for this match that it had the feel of like a big kind of main event style of match. And it was cool to see Demolition win the titles back. And I talked about dominant teams in WrestleMania's history. At WrestleManias 4, 5, and 6, all 3 in a row, they were in the Tag Team Championship match, and they won all 3 times. So they are undefeated in Tag Team Championship matches at WrestleMania. The pairing of Axe and Smash is also unbeaten at WrestleMania. Of course, the Smash and Crush version of Demolition would wrestle at WrestleMania 7 and lose, but that doesn't count because it's not Axe and Smash, the true Demolition. But in any case, I just thought the match came off really well. I thought... the title change was very nice and a nice way to get the belts back on Demolition. I thought Haku worked well with the powerhouse. Haku was such a unique athletic specimen, too, that him working with 2 brutes like Axe and Smash made for some typically nice stuff. And Andre got his spots in, even though, again, he wasn't legally tagged in. And the post-match was even better because that was when Andre the Giant turned against Bobby Heenan and turned face again, and which ended up being his last match with the WWF. And that was awesome. That was just a great post-match face turn where the crowd went nuts when he started beating the crap out of Bobby and beat up Haku as well. And all of that was really, really good and really kind of a nice little WrestleMania moment and a nice farewell for Andre in a lot of ways. It wasn't his last appearance, but it was his last match with the WWF. And again, I really liked how all that came off. It had a good setup, good match, good post-match. Everything just worked well. And it's one of the more memorable tag title matches from the earlier WrestleManias, for sure. And number 6 on my list is actually another Tag Team Championship match involving Demolition from WrestleMania 4. It was Demolition taking on Strikeforce, the defending champions being Strikeforce, as Demolition, as I already talked about before, ultimately would win their first Tag Team Championship at this event, as securing the win after some interference from their devious manager, Mr. Fuji. Demolition were heels at this point. And overall, just a really nice match. From a WrestleMania that was very kind of awkward and a little clunky in places, this was one of the few things that they didn't mess up. It was just a very basic Tag Team Championship match where you had this brute powerhouse tag team of Demolition taking on like the flashier, younger athletic types, and it made for a very, very natural type of match. And overall, it came off really well. I'm happy that Demolition won the titles, obviously. I felt like they were the hotter act. I felt like they were cooler and everything, so it was nice to see them win the belts. And they obviously got a lot of mileage out of Demolition because they would go on to become the longest reigning tag team champions in WWF history. It's a record that still stands to this day. And they would do a lot of great things, being kind of the top of the tag team division during that period. And Strikeforce was another one of those teams that could work well with just about anybody. Tito Santana and Rick Martel, obviously both very good workers. And they worked really well together as a team. They would actually have an even better match the next year at WrestleMania 5, where Martel turned on Santana during their match against the Brainbusters, Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard. Also a really good tag match, one that often gets forgotten, but is actually quite good. Bit of a hidden gem from WrestleMania 5. But overall, this WrestleMania 4 tag title match was one of the best parts of an otherwise kind of clunky and weird show, and it's a good one. Number 7, we're going into the Attitude Era now. From WrestleMania 14, the New Age Outlaws defending against the team of Cactus Jack and Terry Funk. Not Chainsaw Charlie. Why the fuck did they call him Chainsaw Charlie? We all know it's Terry Funk. Everyone knows who the fuck Terry Funk is. I don't understand that. It was just... I don't know. It was just ignorant and stupid to try and parade him around as like a completely different character when we all know it's Terry Funk and we all love him as Terry Funk. It just didn't make any sense to me. Just didn't make any sense. I mean, Mick Foley coming in as Mankind made sense because they couldn't... Cactus Jack was more of a character, but Terry Funk was the dude's real name, and he legitimately is like kind of that. I mean, what you see is what you get with Terry, and why they wouldn't just go with that instead of just trying to concoct the whole Chainsaw Charlie thing, I have no idea. But that's really my only complaint about this match. I thought the build-up to this match was very good with the younger, brasher Outlaws. First they had taken out LOD, and now they were going after the hardcore veterans of Cactus Jack and Terry Funk, and they did the whole bit on Raw where they put them in the dumpster and threw them off the stage and all this stuff. And really, the Outlaws during this period were great because they were mean, they were nasty, they were rebellious, they were just perfect for this era. And this is the best they were as characters. Eventually, as the years wore on, they would just become like a song and dance routine and just do the same exact thing every week, and were not rebellious or interesting at all. They were just kind of like, they would just recite their catchphrases and their entrance, and that was all they did, and they eventually became boring. But this match came off really, really well because of the attitude, pardon the pun, that they brought to the table during this period. And basically, it was just a nice hardcore match, just a nice hard-hitting hardcore match where a ladder came into play at one point, and they did some stuff where they fell off the ladder and fell into the dumpster, and this is actually where Terry Funk got hurt, believe it or not. Yeah, some of the things that man would do at his age were just crazy, but eventually the match would spill out backstage where the Outlaws were double teaming Cactus, but Terry Funk got back there and commandeered a forklift, and they were able to turn the tides against the Outlaws, put them into another dumpster, and use the forklift to keep the dumpster shut. And the image of Terry Funk operating a forklift and cursing up a storm is hysterical. I love that image. It's one of my favorite. One of my favorite backstage bits in any WrestleMania. Just the image of Terry Funk on a forklift riding around backstage was really, really funny. But yeah, I thought this was just a very nice hardcore match to complement the build-up of this particular feud. Cactus and Chainsaw would win the tag titles, but they would not keep them long based on the controversy that the Outlaws lost the match despite being put in a non-regulation dumpster, which actually kind of makes sense. It's like they put them in... Cactus and Chainsaw put them in a dumpster that was not the one used in the match, so... technically, the Outlaws shouldn't have lost that match based on being put in the dumpster backstage. And I'm like, that's actually a really good point. Strangely. But as weird as it sounds. So they would have a rematch the next night, cage match, I believe. And that was when DX was formed, where Triple H and X-Pac would hit the ring. And or I should say the new DX was formed with Shawn Michaels out of the picture. But, this WrestleMania 14 match, WrestleMania 14 did a lot of things right from a booking standpoint, and this was one of the things they got right. Again, just having a nice hardcore match for the Tag Team Championship, and again, great storyline, great characters, great build-up, and great payoff, and there's not a whole lot else you can ask for other than that. That and the fact that I can't think of too many New Age Outlaws matches that I legitimately enjoyed, so this is one of them. I think it's this one and the match that they had with the Dudleys in TNA at that one Slammiversary. I think it was Slammiversary 06. They had a hardcore match that was really good. But other than that, I was never really a big fan of the Outlaws matches. But this one was good. This one was really good. So, moving right along from there, from WrestleMania 9. Money Incorporated, Ted DiBiase and IRS versus Hulk Hogan and Brutus Beefcake, the Megamaniacs. Some people don't like this match very much, and I can kind of understand why. Because it's got a lot of shtick in it, especially towards the end where the referee gets knocked out and all the crazy stuff with Jimmy Hart like turning his coat inside out and playing referee and counting the pin for Hogan and Beefcake, which was kind of ridiculous. But yeah, I think when you put Hogan into something, it kind of elevates the standing of the match beyond what it would normally be. I mean, putting Hogan in this match really... made this feel like a main event, and it was a tag title match, and it made it feel like one of the major matches from this WrestleMania. And I think that level of hype kind of elevated everything about the match, from the crowd reaction to the significance of it to everything. And Money Inc., they worked really well as a team, Ted DiBiase and IRS, although it makes no sense for a tax man to be working with a super rich guy. You would think that they would be enemies. Like, that's a feud that should have happened. But Ted DiBiase, you need to pay your taxes. There's a WrestleMania showdown for you. But... yeah, the federal government versus the 1%. That would have... they should revisit that feud now. It would kind of be appropriate. But, yeah, it's... I thought the tag match was a lot of fun. I thought they did a lot of things. Jimmy Hart turning face and joining with Hogan and Beefcake, and Beefcake being attacked by Money Inc. being the incentive for Hogan to come back after being gone since WrestleMania 8. I actually remember some of the stuff they did on the early Raws to set that whole thing up. And yeah, I just thought it was a nice, exciting tag match that was made bigger than it would normally be because you had Hogan involved, and Hogan's involvement really elevated the match. Now, I also have to talk about Hogan's black eye in this match, which was nasty as hell. And there's that long-standing rumor that Randy Savage had punched him backstage, so Hogan had to perform with a black eye. That has since been discredited. Turns out it was a jet ski accident that Hogan was a part of. But in any case, yeah, I thought this match was really entertaining, a lot of fun, and also, Ted DiBiase actually beat Hogan. Money Inc. won by disqualification when it was decided that the ref bump was. I'm trying to remember what happened. They'd used Brutus Beefcake's protective mask as a weapon while the referee was down, and ultimately that led to a second referee coming down and ordering the disqualification on Hogan and Beefcake. But overall, it was nice to see DiBiase finally beat Hogan at something, even though it was by DQ. It's like, no, he won. He got the best of Hogan. DiBiase holds a victory over Hogan, damn it, at WrestleMania, no less. But, just a really entertaining match, a lot of fun, and it felt big because of who was involved. Number 9, a tag team title match that I was actually in attendance for. Team Hell No, Daniel Bryan and Kane taking on the challengers Dolph Ziggler and Big E Langston with AJ Lee in their corner. Yeah, this was a match where they kind of sort of accidentally stumbled onto a year-long build-up, whether it was by design or not, because of the history between Daniel Bryan and AJ Lee being boyfriend-girlfriend the year before, and AJ Lee, her kiss of death leading to Daniel Bryan's 18-second loss at WrestleMania the year before in the world title match, which they actually brilliantly called back to here, where AJ kind of almost set up Dolph to lose in the exact same way. I thought that actually was a nice callback. But, it almost felt like they had like a year-long build-up for this match. And Team Hell No, to their credit, it was a surprisingly good team, one that actually worked out kind of well. This great odd couple tag team where, I've said before, it was Kane's best run probably since the late 90s when he was last interesting. And Daniel Bryan showed that he could shine just about anywhere you put him. This is a tag team that by all rights should not have worked, but it did, and it worked out great. And being there in attendance for this WrestleMania, it was very cool to take part in the Yes Chants. And in that stadium with all those thousands of people, it was around, I think the attendance was around 80,000 people. To have all of that, all those people going yes, yes, yes for Daniel Bryan was actually really cool, and it was really amazing to see how much everybody had gotten behind Bryan, even by this point, when he was just stuck in the tag division. But, and I've argued before, it's like, being stuck in the tag division shouldn't be viewed as being stuck as long as you make that spot seem important. And Team Hell No did the best they could to make that spot feel important and actually got the team over, and it worked really well. And the match was good. Ziggler worked really well in there. Langston's a good powerhouse. They actually kind of, in a weird way, both teams kind of mirror each other, where you have the smaller athletic guy and the big powerhouse, and both teams were kind of set up the same way. And Team Hell No ultimately got the win, retained their tag titles, but overall, it was a fun match to have on the undercard, and a good, solid match. And the love and admiration for Daniel Bryan and the excitement of being in that crowd to experience that was really cool, and that kind of heightens this match a little bit for me personally. Number 10, from WrestleMania 19, we have Team Angle taking on Los Guerreros and the rather odd thrown-together tag team of Chris Benoit and Rhyno. This was for the SmackDown Tag Team Championship. Team Angle being Haas and Benjamin. Ultimately, they would go on to become the world's greatest tag team. And ultimately, they would become the world's greatest tag team that did not live up to the potential that they had, mainly because of how poorly they were booked. But, I should have been seeing Eminem versus Haas and Benjamin in 2005 and 2006, and it never happened because they just kind of fucked everything up. But, this was it was kind of a filler match. It was just there to get guys on the card and to, an excuse to do a lot of fancy wrestling moves involving guys that could do those fancy wrestling moves. Haas and Benjamin were great together. They were kind of an instant hit. And I kind of see a lot of the same chemistry that I saw with Haas and Benjamin, I'm kind of seeing now in NXT with Jason Jordan and Chad Gable. Although Jordan and Gable are actually funnier, which they also have that going for them too, is that they have personality to go along with it. But Yeah, it was a nice display from 6 talented individuals. I don't think this match was as good as some of the matches that you saw in 2002 when the 3 teams, it was Angle and Benoit, Edge and Ray, and the Guerreros. I don't think this match is as good as those matches, but for what it was, I thought it was a pretty solid action-packed display from the tag division, and in a spot that wasn't very highly promoted or treated with much dignity. I mean, they did the best they could, and providing a really solid kind of filler match to fill out the card, and I thought they did a good job. Team Angle would retain the titles here, and and it was a lot of fun. I really liked it. And at number 11, we have the very first Tag Team Championship match in WrestleMania's history. The U.S. Express, the team of Barry Windham and Mike Rotunda, taking on the challengers Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkoff with Classy Freddie Blassie in their corner. Lou Albano was in the U.S. Express's corner. And, this match is significant for one reason. It was the first title change in WrestleMania's history. So Sheik and Volkoff would cheat their way to win the championships, and ultimately create the first championship title change in the grand event's long history. So it's significant for that reason. The match itself was kind of just a product of the time where you had the evil foreigners taking on the All-American boys, and it was, it was what it was. It was the 80s. What do you expect? Cold War. It was a thing. Very much a product of its time, but the match itself was fine. You had the more powerful duo of Volkoff and Sheik taking on the younger athletic guys, and the match was good for what it was. It was okay. And like I said, it's got a little bit of that little spark of historical significance attached to it as well. So it deserves to be, it deserves some credit just for that alone. So that one gets a thumbs up. Next up, we have from WrestleMania 10, another MSG WrestleMania Tag Team Championship match. The Quebeckers with Johnny Polo, better known as Raven, in their corner, taking on the challengers Men on a Mission, Mabel and Mo with Oscar in their corner. This match was way better than it had any right to be. You think of these teams, you think of 2 teams that aren't really that well remembered or celebrated in the history of wrestling. Men on a Mission sucked. Just throwing that out there. They were just kids version friendly rappers that were just lame. I mean, they were just so fucking lame. And the Quebeckers were they were okay. I always liked Jacques Rougeau. Him as the Mountie was great, but putting it in the tag team kind of diluted that aspect to his character. But overall, I thought the team worked about as well together as they possibly could. But there was a lot of good tag team action going on here with some double team moves from the Quebeckers to them bumping all over the place for Mabel. To Mabel actually doing a spin kick at one point, and Mo surprisingly being able to fly around all over the place. So the match turned out better than it had any right to. The Quebeckers ultimately opted to take the count-out loss, so there's no title change here, even though the champions lost. And the match was, for a match that has absolutely no expectations attached to it, it's actually not that bad. So there's not a whole lot to say about it other than that. Number 13, the Smoking Guns the Smoking Guns defending their titles against Owen Hart and a mystery partner at WrestleMania 11. The setup was actually kind of cool because the reasoning behind Owen choosing his partner was very much in character. Owen revealed that Yokozuna was his mystery partner. Yokozuna had been missing from WWF television after losing the casket match to The Undertaker back in November. So this was Yokozuna's return, and his reasoning was that Yokozuna accomplished the one thing that Owens always wanted to do: beat Bret Hart for the World Heavyweight Championship. It's like, man, what a dick! He would align himself with the guy just because that guy beat his brother once for the world title. But so the setup there was great, and thankfully Owen and Yoko won the belts, because that would have just made them look foolish if they didn't win, and I thought all of that came off really well. Match itself was a little awkward. I don't know what happened here. The ending in particular, where Yoko hit the leg drop, and then it was like they almost didn't know who was supposed to get the pin, Owen or Yoko, and they just kind of, I don't know, rushed into the finish or whatever it was. Yeah, so the match was a little awkward. Not terrible. It was just sort of, again, the match itself was just sort of there, nothing special. Really, the most special thing about it was the duo of Owen Hart and Yokozuna, and that was a thrown-together singles tag team that actually worked out kind of well for the time that they were together. Now, that would eventually translate into a Bulldog and Owen tag team that I thought was better. I think most people agree was the better pairing, but Owen and Yoko, they worked well together as a team for a while. So, they got some good stuff out of this. The match, like I said, the match was okay, but the reasoning behind Owen picking Yoko as his partner and the stuff that they would do moving forward from here makes it a little bit better, too. So, some good stuff came out of it, which is nice. Number 14, the first of 2 4-way tag team championship matches at WrestleMania 20. It's like, that's not... I mean, you had 2 matches with a total of 16 guys in it. That's a bit much, I would say. But, yeah, the team of Rob Van Dam and Booker T, who was a singles thrown-together tag team that did not work. RVD and Booker did not complement each other at all. Like, they went together like peanut butter and vinegar. The two just didn't mesh well together. They also had like the worst mashup theme music I think I've ever heard. But they were the champions going into this, shockingly. They were defending the gold against the Dudley Boyz, La Resistance, and probably the least spectacular tag team to ever get a tag title shot at WrestleMania, Lance Cade and Mark Jindrak. The member of Evolution that you never knew about. But yeah, the match felt a little overbloated, and so did the SmackDown one, which is obviously coming up later in this list. We had seen the Dudleys and La Resistance work with each other so many times that I was sick of seeing it at this point. I mean, my God, I was at a point. I mean, in 2003, it always seemed to come back to La Resistance and the Dudley Boyz, and by this point, I was so sick and tired of seeing it that I was just like, oh my God, will somebody just put a bullet in my head so I don't have to see this match again? Unfortunately, I think this was the last time they did it because they broke up La Resistance after the brand split drafting for 2004. Split up La Resistance for good, I think. And that's a real good thing. That's really, really good. But in any case, the match was okay for what it was. It was very action-packed. Again, it's 4 teams, so they're going to bounce all over the place. RVD and Booker T retained the titles after RVD hit the 5-star frog splash. It was solid for what it was. Certainly better than I would have expected it to be because my expectations were extremely low. But it was just sort of there. It was just just kind of there. And although I will give them credit for having 2 4-way tag team title matches, they at least had 4 teams gunning for the tag titles. I don't think Jindrak and Cade belonged in this, but what can you do? Yeah, moving on from there, we have the third of Demolition's... the third and final of Demolition's Tag Team Championship matches at WrestleMania. This was actually their second one. At WrestleMania 5, Demolition defended the Tag Team Championships against the Powers of Pain and Mr. Fuji in a 3-on-2 handicap match. First of all, I hate the Powers of Pain. For all the flack that Demolition gets for being Road Warrior ripoffs, the Powers of Pain were much, much more obvious, in their offense of being Road Warrior ripoffs. They had done the storyline where Mr. Fuji, was managing Demolition, and he turned on them, even though they were still the tag champions, he turned on them to throw in his hat with the Powers of Pain. My problem with that, though, is that, okay, that's fine, a manager turning on somebody to go for a seemingly better client. That makes sense, but when he do it after Demolition loses the tag titles, it doesn't make much sense to drop them as your clients when they're currently the top of the tag team division. That just seems really kind of like, biting your nose off to spite your face, It's just kind of stupid. But anyway, Fuji added something to this match. The manager, being an active participant and getting beat up by the babyfaces, added something a little different to this match. I kind of spruced it up a little bit, too, because this match was dull as fuck. It's 2 bruiser powerhouse tag teams, one of which was not very good in the Powers of Pain. I like Barbarian a lot. Warlord never, he was kind of a musclehead, but it was it was a unique challenge for Demolition because they had to be the quicker, faster, smaller team this time around when they're not used to being that. But other than that, really Fuji's involvement was the only thing to really take away from this. They ultimately were able to, Axe and Smash were able to put Fuji away and get the pin on him after hitting the Demolisher, which I don't think Demolition's tag team finisher ever officially had a name. I think we as fans have just called it the Demolisher because that name sounds cool. But match was just kind of there. It was okay. Like I said, Fuji added more to it than probably would have been there if he hadn't. So we have that one. And then number 16 is a match I've already talked about in the opening match video. Big Show and Kane defending their gold against Carlito and Chris Masters. Carlito should have been so much more. I still feel bad about that to this day. And of course, I also have to laugh about the Kane Big Show pairing, which it always felt like they never knew what to do with Big Show and Kane. And whenever they got to that point, they would stick them together as a tag team. They're doing it now with the fucking Wyatt family. It's like, it's goddamn Kane and Big Show. They're going to be thrown together in tag teams from now until eternity. It's just like, Jesus Christ, will this ever stop? But yeah, I think I've already said all there is to say about this match. You know, Carlito and Masters are guys that should have been prepped up for bigger things. Instead, they kind of got fed to the wolves here. The match isn't terrible, but it's not great either. And as far as the tag title match goes, it's four guys that probably shouldn't have been involved in the tag title situation, being thrown into the tag title situation because they didn't know what else to do with them. So that's what that was. And then we've got number 17, the second of the two four-way tag team matches, tag title matches from WrestleMania 20. Rikishi and Scotty 2 Hotty defending against the APA, the world's greatest tag team, and the Basham Brothers. Now, looking at this one on paper, it seems like the talent involved would actually be better. I mean, you've got world's greatest tag team, you've got the Acolytes, who are more celebrated tag teams. The Basham Brothers weren't bad. Rikishi and Scotty 2 Hotty were just, oh my god, oh, yeah. I distinctly remember thinking at this point, it's like, it's 2004, and they're still doing the same song and dance they were doing 4 years ago, with nothing changed, nothing altered. The only thing that's changed is that Grandmaster Sexay isn't there anymore. But it's, oh my god, I was so sick of them by this point. I don't think they lasted too much longer after this, but, yeah, the Acolytes didn't last too much longer after this either, because right after this they would set up JBL's eventual push to the WWE title after, you know, a shit ton of people got hurt. Yeah, this was kind of the last hurrah for just about every team on this list, I think, except for the Bashams, who would go on to join JBL's cabinet later that year, which wouldn't amount to much, but hey. Yeah, because World's Greatest Tag Team got split up, and they tried to push Shelton Benjamin as a single star moving forward, which didn't really pan out, but what can you do? This match was a little bit more boring than the Raw one, but it was also shorter, so it was even more of a filler. Rikishi and Scotty 2 Hotty won, which was just kind of like, okay. I can't believe this team is still a thing, but okay. Yeah, that's really all there is to say about that. It was inoffensive. It was just a filler match. I can't really get too mad at it, but you know, again, it's cluttering a bunch of guys into one match over belts that don't really mean anything and keeping the belts on a team that I'm completely bored with. So them's the breaks there, I guess. Number 18 from WrestleMania 8, Money Incorporated taking on the Natural Disasters, Earthquake and Typhoon. Now, I think, and I could be wrong here, I think the story was that it was supposed to be the Legion of Doom versus Money Inc., with Legion of Doom going in as the defending champions. But Hawk ran into some personal problems and got suspended. So that match had to be scrapped. And then Money Inc. won the belts out of nowhere. And then they randomly, I don't remember them ever turning Natural Disaster's face. They just showed up at WrestleMania 8 and all of a sudden they were baby faces. I was like, okay. If it happened, great. I don't remember ever seeing it. So I was just really confused when I watched WrestleMania 8 as a kid. I was like, wait, when did Earthquake and Typhoon become good guys? Like, when did this happen? But that awkwardness and the obvious thrown together nature of this match made it feel very, very tacked on and awkward, and like there wasn't much going for it, and it was a dull match as a result. And I hate to knock on a DiBiase match because I love DiBiase to death, but this match didn't turn out very well because you didn't really get a sense of the Natural Disasters as babyfaces yet. You didn't really get a sense of Money Inc. as the champions yet because I don't recall ever seeing the title change hands because obviously they didn't. They just they just got the belts off of the Legion of Doom and just rushed that whole thing. But it felt rushed, it felt tacked on, it felt meaningless, and that pretty much just sums up everything there is to say about this match. Money Inc. would get counted out and save their titles that way. That seems to be a common theme with tag title matches at WrestleMania. But in any case, it just wasn't it was not one of the better matches in WrestleMania's history, which is why it's so low on this particular list. Next up, number 19, Show Miz defending against John Morrison and R-Truth. I already talked about this match as an opener. As a tag match, as a tag title match, it's even worse because you had Jericho and Big Show as the champions at one point, and they were a much better thrown together tag team, like much, much better. And Show Miz didn't really work for me, quite honestly. And then you had John Morrison and R-Truth, which is about as random and thrown together as you can possibly be, and the match was short. It felt like a filler. It felt like the WWE didn't really care. They just wanted to get it over with, and it was what it was. Show Miz kept the titles to the delight of absolutely no one, and that was it. And I'll say it again, WrestleMania 26, they could have had Edge and Christian versus Jericho and Big Show, and I think that would have been a much better tag team championship match, but what can you do? So from there, we move on to number 20 from WrestleMania 13, my favorite WrestleMania. They did so many good things on this show. The British Bulldog and Owen Hart defending the titles against Mankind and Vader. Now, you look at those four guys and you think, wow, those are four very talented guys. This could have been a really good match. The problem is that both teams were heels and the fans had nobody to root for. So it just felt like it was kind of boring because if you don't have a horse in the race, then you're just not going to care. And you had two teams that were good at getting heel heat, but none of them could really do it in this match because you didn't want to see them do bad things to those particular guys. I don't know. It was just the problem with heel versus heel matches is that either A, the fans turn somebody babyface, so it's not really heel versus heel, or they just don't cheer or react to anybody because they hate all the sides involved, and that's kind of what happened here. It was just kind of a dull, boring, plodding match that went on forever. This match was really long, too. It is not very good, and it ended in a double countout, too, which just made the entire experience feel pointless. Yeah, it wasn't good. It was not good. No, not a good one. WrestleMania 13, they struck again. I mean, this was the unlucky 13 for WrestleMania. This is just so many bad things on this show, and I'm not even done with WrestleMania 13 yet. Oh joy. From there, it's hard to believe there was actually worse than that one, but we've got two more to go. From WrestleMania 18, an elimination match, defending champions Billy and Chuck taking on the Hardy Boys, the Dudley Boys, and the APA in a four-way elimination match. On paper, it doesn't sound that bad, but I think by this point, after we'd seen so many ladder matches and tables matches and cage matches and all these other things involving the big teams during this period, which were the Dudleys, the Hardys, and Edge and Christian, who were broken up by this point, this just felt ordinary to have at a WrestleMania. It just felt like, oh, this is the tag title match now? Because the last two were pretty spectacular, and this one just kind of like this normal fucking thing, which was just an excuse to cram guys onto the show, and it's like, oh, okay. When the best part of the match is Stacy Keibler's ass, you have a problem. Yeah, remember that period when Stacy Keibler was in the Dudley's corner? That was weird. I was like, but although Jeff Hardy also forced himself onto Stacy, because that's what heroes do. But anyway, when Stacy Keibler's ass is the best part of a match, you've got problems. This was boring as all hell. Boring. I don't know if it was just the Hardys and the Dudleys just emptied the gun and just had nothing left to do. And, throwing Billy and Chuck into the mix didn't really freshen things up at all, but it was just a dull-ass match. Just a very, very dull match. Even JR sounded bored, although JR did have one great call where Bubba Ray had this habit of always going for this senton splash that he never hit. Just never ever hit, but he did it like every single match. It was his version of Ric Flair getting thrown off the top rope. And finally in this match, JR was like, I don't think Bubba has ever hit that move. And just to hear JR say that, just be that sarcastic about it, was hilarious. It was like, I don't think Bubba has ever hit that move. I just love it. I loved it whenever the commentators would like be honest and kind of say what we're thinking. And that was a case where I was like JR kind of beat me to the punch there. It's like, I don't think I've ever seen Bubba hit that move. It was just really funny. And I distinctly remember, like, the next time the Dudleys wrestled on Raw, Bubba hit the move. And I'm like, that had to be a reaction to what JR said at WrestleMania. It had to be. It's just too big of a coincidence. But, yeah, those are the only noteworthy parts of an otherwise dull-ass match. Billy and Chuck would ultimately retain the titles. Billy and Chuck as champions didn't really work for me. They were kind of, to me, they were a poor man's version of Lenny and Lodi from WCW, which Lenny and Lodi were so great. I mean, they were so like legitimately believable in their roles, whereas Billy and Chuck, who were playing openly gay stereotypes, I mean, they really did feel like stereotypes. Like these people are not really gay. They're playing cartoon characters that this is how gay people act. Whereas Lenny and Lodi kind of felt believable and real, and there was like, oh no, Lenny and Lodi are really gay. And WCW had to pull the plug on it because I'm not allowed to have nice things apparently. But Billy and Chuck never really worked for me, and the match was the match was dull as fuck, but not the worst in WrestleMania's history. That honor goes to WrestleMania 15's bout, another WrestleMania that did so many things right and did so many great things that I just loved. Jeff Jarrett and Owen Hart defending the championship against... I said that Jindrak and Cade may be the most unspectacular team to ever challenge for the tag titles at WrestleMania. This duo gives it a run for its money. D'Lo Brown and Test, and I'm not knocking on either guy. This team was just random as fuck. By design. They got the tag title shot because they won a battle royal on the pre-show of Sunday Night Heat. The setup of the Battle Royal was that the final two men would get a tag title shot at WrestleMania 15. It meant nothing. Jarrett and Owen ultimately retained the titles anyway, so like the whole exercise was completely pointless. And there were also a lot of working components going on here. Ivory was in D'Lo and Test's corner. And PMS came down. That was PMS, the Pretty Mean Sisters. That was the duo of Jacqueline and Terry Runnels. They came down and caused interference. That was when they were doing the fake pregnancy angle with Marlena, to get D'Lo Brown to do things where she faked a miscarriage and all sorts of crazy crap like that. But too many working components in this match. Just too many variables. It just felt messy and sloppy and random as all hell. I understand that the original plan was to do D'Lo and Mark Henry versus Jarrett and Owen, which would have made sense because D'Lo and Mark Henry actually were a tag team, but Mark Henry got hurt and plans had to change. That's unfortunate. It's an explanation for what happened, but it's not an excuse. The end result, D'Lo and Brown couldn't get along as a team. They ultimately lost. I guess that makes sense, but at the same time, it was like, what was the point of this fucking match? It was just so fucking pointless. It's sad that Jarrett and Owen are at the bottom of the list here for the worst tag title match in WrestleMania history because they actually were a good team together. I thought the pairing worked out really, really well. They just didn't really get a chance to show it that much because there weren't really a whole lot of teams for them to work with at this point. This was before the Dudleys and the Hardys and Edge and Christian really kind of broke out and became... I don't think the Hardys had appeared on TV yet. The Dudleys definitely weren't there yet. And it didn't leave Owen and Jarrett with a whole lot of work. Now... begs the question why Edge and Christian were not on the card at all. They were relegated to a non-wrestling role. Why that happened, I don't know. Go figure. They could have thrown the APA in there. Well, they weren't the APA yet. They were the Acolytes. But Farouk and Bradshaw could have thrown them in there. Thrown like a real tag team in there, but whatever. We had to go with this random bullshit. That resulted in my pick for the worst tag team championship match in WrestleMania's history. But that concludes my list for this edition of WrestleMania Best to Worst. We are at the halfway point now. 5 videos down, 5 to go. And join me next time when I start getting into the wrestler-specific lists for the Best to Worst series, starting with Shawn Michaels and then eventually working into Triple H and The Undertaker's streak. So that is going to be a lot of fun. I hope you all are enjoying the series so far, and until then, I will see you all later.